All right, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back once again to the longest running show in the world about data. It's time for DM Radio. Yours truly, Eric Kavanaugh here. And folks, I am tickled pink because we have an all-star cast of experts. We're going to be hearing from Dr. Lisa Palmer, the AI expert. We're going to be hearing from JB Robles, who is out in the field, a practitioner. She can give us some real-world insights about what's actually happening. And of course, Arun Varadarajan from Ascendion, who has been doing Agentic DevOps for about 14 months with his team. So that's what we're going to talk about today, folks. And you cannot have not heard about vibe coding and all sorts of these new platforms like Lovable, of course, ChatGPT, Claude. They're all over the place. Replete is another one. I mean, you turn around and there's another one, and they have $100 million valuations, like just boom, like that. You're like, okay, what's going on here? There must be something happening. These technologies are fascinating. They are dramatically changing what's happening in the world of development, but you have to be careful, of course. And then agentic DevOps in and of itself, doing an agent first approach as opposed to the old fashioned way of requirements gathering. Let's sit down and start hacking out some code. No, the folks at Ascendion are going to talk about how they are agent first. So it's a different game. And, I've really thought a lot about this and I keep trying to come up with the proper metaphors to describe what we're seeing. And one I came up with the other day is that all the way up until this point in history, with terms of programming and database design, information systems, we were pushing this big rock up the hill, really working hard to get it all the way up that hill to get some business value. Now it's almost like that big rock, that boulder's at the top of the hill and it's starting to go down, and we're trying to slowly manage its way down so it doesn't roll over us and do crazy things. Well, of course, crazy things do happen. We've heard stories about some guy who gave Replete access to his GitHub and write access to his information systems, and it went and deleted his database. And it said, "Oh, sorry." First apparently it lied about it, said, "No, I didn't do that." And then it said, "Okay, I did, and that was a big mistake." And he asked it to grade its performance, and he gave himself a 95 out of 100. The AI agent did. You're like, okay, guys, come on. So you have to be careful with this stuff, how you deploy it, when you deploy it, and what you do with it. These are all very, very important questions, but to not look at it, to pretend that it's not happening, is definitely not a good idea. So let's go around the room and introduce our guests and have them say a couple things about themselves. Dr. Lisa Palmer, I'll throw it over to you, the AI expert. Tell us a bit about what you're working on these days and what you think about this vibe coding stuff.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Eric. I am working on a lot of enterprise level, multi-billion dollar companies are typically our clients, and we are helping them to get directionally moving in a positive way with artificial intelligence. Some of them have gotten off to a little bit of a bumpy start, and we're coming in and helping them get redirected. Others are really just now starting to get traction, and then the ones that are extremely exciting to work with are all the way on the end of the innovation curve, where they're out there and they have, hundreds or thousands of use cases that are already actively leveraging AI. So we do this from an advising and consulting practice lens, as well as I have an agentic AI startup firm where we are builders and we're working on solutions for clients every day. So it's a really fun space to be in, but every single day the goalposts are moving and we have to stay really on top of what's changing and make sure that we're directing people in a productive way.
Yeah, well, that's a fun job and that's a very exciting job. And to your point, things are changing so fast now, it's kind of like our heads are spinning, right? You're just like, okay, what changed today? New models coming out. Some of them are great, some of them disappoint. All kinds of things are happening out there, and the business just needs answers. The business needs to know, what are we going to do? How can we leverage these technologies responsibly? And that's a good entree for Jamie Robles. Could you tell us a bit about yourself? And I know that responsible AI is a big part of your mantra, right?
It is, and thank you, Eric. So it's great to be here. I am actually the senior vice president and general manager for enterprise and pharmacy for Gainwell Technologies, and so we're a company that essentially works with our state governments to backbone Medicaid. We do the Medicaid processing in a lot of states, actually 31 for claims. And I have spent the last 25 years of my career in healthcare. And so I have been in the space around payer, which is, the large providers of health insurance. And so we're doing a lot of things to understand how AI is going to impact healthcare. How do we do that responsibly? How do we guard against the loss of personal health information as we think about how to infuse more AI into our processes and work with our regulators and clients in the government space to do that in a way that abides by all of the different regulation.
Yeah, well, that's a very serious job, and I appreciate that there are people such as yourself who are out there on the front lines doing what I talked about, which is, trying to get stuff up the hill and also like trying to make sure it doesn't roll down the hill in the wrong direction too quickly because this AI generated content and AI generated code, it can move very, very quickly, and you have to dot your I's and cross your T's, and as the carpenters would say, measure twice and cut once, right? Well, let's bring in Arun, last but not least from Ascendion. Tell us a bit about yourself and Agentic DevOps.
Well, Eric, again, it's wonderful being in the show with you again. For the audience, my name is Arun Varadarajan. I'm co-founder and chief commercial officer of a company called Ascendion. So when you think about Ascendion, Ascendion is an AI-first engineering solutions company, interestingly birthed at the height of the pandemic. I love saying this because it became a forcing function for us to kind of rethink the whole operating model when it comes to providing engineering solutions and services to clients. So when we started off, we said, you know what, our mission statement is going to help our clients accelerate technology transformation and impact 1 billion life. I know that was a lofty goal, but if you remember, we're talking about 2020. We had just come out of a very underwhelming digital era where promises were made and not really kept. That's how I characterize it. And
Mm-hmm.
we wanted to be very different, right? So we said, you know what, we're going to create a new services model that would reduce dependence on talent because that was a rare commodity at that point in time, drive consistency and operate with a high degree of transparency and deliver what I would call as engineering at speed with no compromise on quality. So if you really think about engineering services and solutions organizations that build platforms and products for clients, they relied a lot on documented standards and guidelines to determine how you build software for and kind of run the software process. So I felt that, you know what, that may not be the best way to go about it because if you remember that in the pandemic, we worked with a lot of remote teams that were distributed across the planet. And we realized the need for actually building a platform where we could use the platform to drive engineering rigor so that we could deliver with efficiency and predictability.
Hmm.
When we started doing our research, we actually found that there were 100 friction points in the software lifecycle that could
Wow.
really be addressed using machine learning and AI. And I'm talking about 5 years ago, right? So it's not Gen AI and all of the stuff that we're talking about today, but simple machine learning and AI to make the engineering experience frictionless for our clients. So we started with machine learning, went to use deep learning, knowledge graphs, and then Gen AI 2.5 years ago. And quite serendipitously, we discovered that our platform had morphed to becoming an agentic AI platform almost 14 months ago.
Hmm.
What I've been doing is I've been working, with our clients and working obviously internally. There's a lot of change that we've been having to drive and started building out what we're calling as a new method for engineering. We call it engineering to the power of AI, where we infuse AI into the entire software lifecycle. And we've been building this platform and method for 4 years now. So we have
Hmm.
about 3,800, 4,000 odd agents that we have built so far,
Wow.
which allow us to fundamentally help clients on all layers of application engineering, right from UI development to the database for infrastructure, for greenfield, brownfield, what have you, different types of software projects. So
Hmm.
that's what I've been doing over the last 5 years, and very excited to have this discussion with the three of you.
Well, yeah, and so you made a couple really good points there that I want to pick up on, and maybe I'll throw it over to Dr. Palmer to start off. I'll first of all say that AI in this capacity is like a live wire. and you need to essentially treat it as if you're doing electrical engineering. Because if you do electrical engineering wrong, you can shock yourself, and really bad things can happen, and you don't want that. So you have to think end to end, the whole process really. And one of the big challenges that we see out there is folks just grabbing code from some of these engines and throwing it into production. No, don't do that, please. Like, use it to get ideas and get the code, and then carefully vet what it's giving you before you put that stuff into production. But I'm going to throw a comment over to you, Dr. Palmer, because Arun mentioned something that really struck me. He talked about the friction points, and there are 100 friction points in this life cycle. And I've always believed that morale is the single most important characteristic of an organization, because when morale is high, good things happen. When morale is low, bad things happen. Money, resource, all these things are also important components, but the morale is crucial. And what leads to bad morale? Friction points that don't get resolved. When people think like there are problems, they've articulated the problems, and they don't see management focusing on that. I see that as the number one path to bad scenarios, bad outcomes. What do you think about this concept of friction points in the software development lifecycle, and how AI can facilitate getting rid of some of them if creating some others?
Every person involved in an organization needs to be rethinking what their job is. As we introduce more AI, whether that's at a technical level or at a very business facing, you have to rethink the way that you work. Every individual person is rethinking, or should be rethinking, what is my process? What is the value I actually bring to the table? And when we talk about friction points, that very well could be because you have leadership that are still thinking about their job in the same way that they were doing it before AI became a major player in their environment.
Hmm.
And or it could be that it's just simply your direct manager that's never made that's never made that move forward. You may not be caring and feeding a culture that's designed for innovation. And I see this over and over again in supersized clients. They have very old school ways of doing things. And when I say old school, pre 3 years ago, okay? So um, they are still thinking about their business processes. They're still thinking about governance. They're still thinking about the way they go to market. They're still thinking about all of these things as if AI has not shifted the entire market, and it has,
Right.
right? And so that's where that friction comes in. If you're not actively cultivating a new culture that is designed for innovation first thinking, you're going to continue to have friction. You're going to lose your best people that are actually the ones that can move the needle for you. And you're going to have disgruntled customers and overall poor employee morale, to your point. So to me, it's all about leaders that are actively reassessing the way that they lead and building a culture that's designed for innovation first.
Yeah, I love that. I thought you made excellent points there, and I'll throw over to you, Jamie. And you deal in a highly regulated environment, so you folks have to be extra careful. But I think that Dr. Palmer is exactly correct. Everyone needs to be paying attention to what's happening here and figuring out how to change their day-to-day workflow and embrace that change. It's hard because changes can be very disruptive, and we're looking at very disruptive changes these days. I mean, goodness gracious. I have friends who work with Claude, and they say it's fantastic. They're able to do tons and tons of work, but then every once in a while it just changes its mind. It does something weird and messes with something. And boy, in a highly regulated environment, that is a big no-no, right? What do you think, Jamie?
Yeah, I think well, I mean, Dr. Palmer's points are spot on. I think that we have to really be thinking about how we handle the change in the culture in our organizations. So for us, there's really kind of two parts. There's what we do to ourselves, right? To think about our code sets, to think about our coding internally, how we build our products, and then there's the outward facing portion, which is how we work with our clients. And I think when it comes to working with our clients, we have a lot of partners that are state regulators. They are, Medicaid directors across the country. CMS is part of our ecosystem. And so there is a lot of movement in regulation now to think about how do we embrace AI, but there's not a lot of written policy about how we do it. And so I think we're navigating that now, helping clients to think about it. I'll give you a great example. We have a lot of clients that are on legacy platforms. Everybody's kind of thinking about modernization in one way or another. And we're looking at how do we think about analyzing those old code sets and bringing them quickly into the new technologies. You either modernize what you've got in place or you think about taking them to something new entirely. And I think there are ways that that then is, more of an easy discussion with a client rather than thinking about how do you infuse AI into a prior authorization process for medications or medical services. That's really, I think, where you have to kind of think about the differentiation there. But when I think about the workforce and how we're enabling that workforce, we have to be able to tell the story of we're not eliminating all of the ways that you get experience because we're taking those lower level, low experience jobs away and handing it to AI, but we're really still going to be able to find ways to get you the experience you need to take on the career trajectory that you want to have. And I do think that that is the challenge for us as leaders as we think about AI in our workforces.
Yeah, and I think you're hinting at something very important here, and I know we talked about this before the show, that it's very important to communicate to your teams that AI is an enabler. This is a tool. It's another tool in the tool chest. It's a very powerful tool in the tool chest, so it's not like some just random analytic tool or something or some new way of moving data. Those are all very focused and tactical in nature. This is a very strategic shift, and these AI tools can do amazing things, but view them through the lens of a co-pilot, of your little helper, and think about training that helper too. One of the more compelling ways I've heard to view ChatGPT as train it as your little friend, your little algorithm. You're helping it understand incrementally who you are and what you're doing. And as long as you keep it in that mindset, you realize, wow, this is really valuable because you can learn about any subject very, very quickly. Anything that you've wanted to learn in the course of an hour, you can sit there on your computer and just dive way deep into the weeds. Yes, it still does hallucinate, but not that much. They're getting better and better about this. And of course, there's a mandate from their organizations to get better about that. But folks, so we've already burned through segment one here. Stand by. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. You're listening to DM Radio. All right, folks, back here on DM Radio, talking to an all-star cast, Dr. Lisa Palmer, Jamie Robles, and of course, Arun Varadarajan of Ascendion. And we're talking about responsible use of AI and using AI as a helper, as a co-pilot. Don't view this through the lens of trying to replace people. I know there are a number of CEOs who have already gone on record saying, oh, we're going to replace all these low-level engineers with AI. No, brother, no, don't do that. Don't, at least don't start that way. Maybe as time goes by and you get your sort of sea legs under you, maybe you will be able to lower headcount. That's very possible. But definitely encourage your team to use these tools so they get familiar, because that's the other thing is you don't know what these things can do yet. Most people don't know. And when you start playing around with it, you start to understand how it's operating. And frankly, not to get off subject here, but ever since I've been playing around with these things, I've thought more and more about how my brain works and how I ingest information and how I communicate. And these tools can be very good because they're very structured. It's like they got the syntax right. And some of the people I've talked to have said that was the easier part, is understanding the syntax of language. But Arun, I'll throw it over to you.
Oh,
Get your team to use this. Of course, you're getting all of your developers to take this agent first approach with developing code, right?
oh, yes. Oh, yes. In fact, I'll throw out an age-old Socrates adage. What Socrates said was, physician, cure thyself.
Yeah.
So we said, when we started driving AI transformation, and like I told you, we started doing this, almost 5 years ago. And when we started talking to clients, we realized, what, the best way to show our clients that this is possible, feasible, and can be done in a safe, pragmatic way is to transform and disrupt our own value chain, right? So when we started going to clients and saying, listen, we are disrupting the core of how we do work for you, and this is how we are doing it. I think we were able to instill a lot more confidence in them that this thing can work. And
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree with all, what both my panelists have said, both Lisa and Jamie. It's very important for us to give people a framework because a lot of people don't know how to use AI still, right? So if you give them a simple rubric and a framework to help them reimagine their process
Hmm.
in the context of leveraging AI, then I think things will become easier. Because I'm going back to my days when I used to actually consult around ERP systems, right? What did we do back then? We went to a client and said, hey, here's your new order to cash process. Let me show you how the new order to cash process looks like if you can bring in that level of automation. What does it do to your talent? What does it do to your organization? What does it do to your process? Let me look at your process today. Let me show you how your process will look like if I introduce an ERP system. So it was a very visceral, experiential way of explaining to the client how this is going to transform their business. Now, it's also super important that you tie this to outcomes, right? Because if I say today my order to cash cycle takes, I don't know, 15 days, right? But if I can show them that using this process, I can reduce cycle time and I can deliver better outcomes for them, like, less, partial shipments, much better order fulfillment, right? I'm just using the order to cash as an example. It's that way of teaching your client how to leverage technology hasn't changed.
Mm-hmm.
So what we've done is, like you said, like everybody said, there's been a plethora and proliferation of tools that have come into everybody's mailboxes and Instagram feeds and whatever else, right? And what they're not doing is really showing the clients how to leverage this to drive outcomes. So what we've done in our world is we've been able to translate our platform into a playbook. And we have a playbook for technology leaders showing them, like, Jamie talked about legacy modernization. That is one of the biggest problems that my clients have today. So I have a playbook for them to show them how all of a sudden the legacy modernization equation is fundamentally changing for them because earlier, I'm sure Jamie will attest to this, people didn't have the money to do legacy modernization.
Hmm.
Have the business case to do legacy modernization because the damn thing took 6, 7 years. You never saw the light at the end of the day. It was way too expensive, too laborious, too risky, right? So one of my clients who came to us about 2.5 years ago and said, I've got this system written on PL1. For folks who don't know PL1, it's older than COBOL. It's about 15 years older than COBOL, which is a 50-year-old system. And the client said, listen, I don't have the money to modernize this. Everybody's telling me it's going to cost $36 million and 7 years to get this done. We were able to show them using our platform that the whole equation changes because we can get this done for you in 18 months and at one-fourth the cost, right? So it's very important that, and we showed them how, right? We actually showed them how this will happen and gave them the confidence that this would work. So I think
Right.
it's about really, like the point that you made, when we are thinking about the leveraging of our platform, obviously our domain is engineering, right? But in our domain, what we are very clearly doing is showing our clients how we are bringing AI and helping them and our engineers deliver outcomes much faster, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have a clear playbook where, we are literally just like, I don't know if you guys are familiar when we sold ERP systems back in the days, we had these very detailed process maps that said, this is what the system will do, this is what the human actor will do, this is what the system will do, this is what the human actor will do. And that's the playbook that we have for every one of the use cases that we typically see in the technology organization,
Yeah,
right?
those are all really good points. And Dr. Palmer, you were just mentioning a moment ago, I saw in the chat here talking about growing your team. and nurturing them and working with them. And I had a really interesting guest a while ago who made such an excellent point talking about a lot of this stuff, saying that fear and excitement both play upon the same emotion, but depending upon how you communicate and how it is received, well, excitement is great, fear is bad, right? When fear happens, you're scaring people away from the potential, and you don't want to do that. What you want to do is excite them about the potential and then kind of walk through something, the workflow, and focus on how will it change your day to day. And the answer can take any number of forms, but just the research side of the co-pilot stuff is very powerful. And once people recognize, hey, this can really help me do my job today faster, and it can tackle some of the tedious stuff that I don't really like doing, that's a big enticement. What do you think, Dr. Palmer?
The first thing that you have to do to get your staff to feel comfortable changing anything, if they're afraid that they're going to work themselves out of a job, they're going to be wildly unmotivated to help you to do that, right?
Wildly, that's great. I got to write that down. Go ahead.
Um, And I see this happen all of the time. You have executives who even will publicly state that they have a goal to reduce staff, that they're going to automate more, et cetera, et cetera. And then they can't understand why they have employees who won't help them to change the way that work is done. I find myself almost speechless in those moments that you have that low an EQ. So that you've got to address that fear that people think they're going to lose their jobs. And if you're really planning to get rid of people as a result of heavy automation, you're going to struggle with change management.
Hmm.
Um, you need to get real about thinking of new ways of working for all of those staff that have fantastic tribal knowledge that you're not going to be able to replace. I also talk to a lot of leaders who think that they're going to pull from some magic AI knowledgeable pool of workers. I don't know where they think this pool of workers lives or where they're hiding, but they're going to lay off this whole group of employees, and they're just going to backfill them overnight with these wildly excited AI knowledgeable team members. And although there are definitely more people that are learning, the number that fall into that category are really small today. And so even if you could backfill with those people, they're going to be very expensive.
Right.
So, these are the things that we have to talk through, uh, reflect on some things like on the job training. How about you
Right.
work together to, rising tides raise all ships, as the old adage goes. How about we work together to use AI in partnership with your fantastic humans? You'll drive up productivity, you'll drive improved customer experience, you'll create new revenue streams that you never even dreamed of before. You need those people that have front lines knowledge and experience as business experts. You need them to help you to come up with these ideas, the art of the possible. If you lay off all those
That's
people,
a
you
good
don't
point.
have that anymore.
That's right. That's such an excellent point, and I'll throw it over to Jamie here. But what Lisa's saying is, I mean, it's really spot on. And I mean, there are so many ways that we can describe this problem. I have many friends looking for work. I'm in the enterprise software industry. Lots of these folks are looking. I hear horror story after horror story about what a pain it is to get a traditional job. And there, that's just one reason you want to be careful about driving your staff away or scaring them under their desks so that they don't help you out. You want to encourage them and work with them. And as she said, and Jamie, here's where I'll throw it to you. These folks know your business. They are going to be the most well-equipped people on the planet to help you figure out how to use these new technologies. Once they're comfortable with them, once they understand what they do, they're the ones who can help you do their job better and faster and more efficiently, and then be happier and to get that morale back up. What do you think, Jamie?
No, I think that's absolutely true. And I was somewhere last week where we were talking about CIOs are the next CHROs for AI, right? We have to
Oh,
think
oh,
about being the HR officers for our AI. And we are managing now all of these different workforces, but it is a hybrid commingled workforce. You don't want to think about getting rid of the people. And I would say that in healthcare in particular, there is, first of all, so many highly compensated, very skilled workers, pharmacists, nurses that are doing this kind of work, which actually can be helped by agentic AI providing summaries of medical records or providing information that would take them hours to go through. But you're not eliminating that. And frankly, if you look at a lot of our Medicaid states or even our federal regulation, there's a lot of stuff in there that is not necessarily what we do today. And so dumping an entire portfolio of policy into a large language model and letting it kind of consume that and figure out what healthcare should look like, I kind of think like you're looking at a giraffe, and at that point you're probably looking at a Salvador Dali version of that giraffe. It's a little melted, it's a little skewed, but in our line of business, people die, and so that is really where you have to think about how do we provide help to people to operate at the top of their license, rather than thinking about replacing them. And so, to me, the whole point of us as leaders is to ensure that that is the message that we're giving, that we really want to continue to invest in our people, and that's why AI is coming, is to make that investment to up level them, to be able to give them better tooling than what they have today.
Yeah, well, and just to throw a comment in here, and our next break is coming up in just under 2 minutes, but just throw a comment. Every IT organization, every engineering group in the world has a backlog of things they've been
Mhm.
trying to get to. And
Yeah.
it's the roadmap, for example. It's the stuff that we want to do that's been out there. That's where you focus your attention. Get your people focused on how to use these technologies, and
Yep.
then get them to realize, hey, we can start hacking away at this roadmap and clear out that backlog. And guess what that does? That's going to open up new revenue streams, new lines of business. It's going to drive greater efficiency in what you're already doing. So it's going to lower costs. It's going to do a bunch of different things. And the people get energized. And this gets back to the concept of morale. When you have good morale and you start knocking things off and you start doing things, your team is feeling better. It's amazing how much more you get done and how much happier people are. Because I'm a big fan of Montessori, and one of her mantras was that the happy worker is a busy worker, if you will. If you feel like you're making progress, if you feel like things are getting done, you get a very good feeling out of that. And it's a very positive feeling, and that feeds into the morale of your organization. So, to all those managers and senior executives who are thinking about this, trying to figure out how can we make more money, in the short term, yes, it can look good to lay people off. I heard a terrible story about a great sales guy just got laid off from one of these big software companies just the other day after hitting his numbers for like 20 years. You're like, all right, guys, come on. You have to be careful about that stuff because, again, these people, they know your business, they know your customers, they know your processes, they know where the bodies are buried, to use a bit of a dark term or analogy there. But the point is, they're the ones who have the domain expertise in your business right now. You bring someone else in, good luck figuring that out. Yeah, they can bring new perspective, they can bring moxie, they can bring savoir faire, all this stuff, but they don't know your business, they don't know your processes. So, folks, don't touch that dial. I'll be right back. You're listening to DM Radio. All right, folks, back here on DM Radio. Yours truly, Eric Kavanaugh, with Dr. Lisa Palmer, Jamie Robles, and Arun Varadarajan. And Arun, we have some great questions in the chat too that I need to get to, but I'll throw it over to you first. Uh, the backlog. Everyone's got a backlog, right? Focus on that backlog. Say, hey guys, if we can embrace this DevOps approach of agentic first,
Mhm.
guess what? We can crank through that backlog. What do you think?
Totally, totally. In fact, the mantra that we use in Ascendion is very simple. We tell our people, you're not going to lose your job to AI, but you're definitely going to lose your job to somebody who knows AI.
Mm-hmm.
So it's super important so we've been investing a lot of time over the last, as I said, 4, 5 years, training our people on the power of AI and really showing them how AI can help them do their work much better. Can you imagine, as a developer, I hated unit testing. I don't want to unit test my code. So that's a good example where I would go and tell a developer, I hated unit testing. If I had an engineering companion doing the unit testing for me, God, I would have embraced it. I could not, right? You have that opportunity. So what we've done, to your point, Eric, well, I think what the theory of abundance, that's what I believe in. There is so much work to get done out there. I mean, there's, like you said, backlog. We also have
Right.
some crazy problems that we haven't solved, right? We haven't solved world hunger. We haven't solved climate
Right.
change. There's so much to solve. The more we solve, there are going to be more problems that we have to solve. So anybody who thinks that AI is going to take away your job is thinking about it very myopically, because probably they are the ones who don't want to learn
Right.
and reskill themselves.
Right.
So we are a learn-it-all organization. We are not a know-it-all organization. We don't believe in that. And that's the culture that we have created within the company. And let me tell you, these 4,000 agents, I didn't build it. It was crowdsourced.
Wow.
Our engineers, they are the ones who built this, because they, like you said, they are the ones who have the domain knowledge, right? If I need to build an agent that writes a sequence diagram, unless you're an enterprise architect, you cannot train the agent to do that, right? So we have actually federated, emancipated the whole process of building agents, and we've got the entire organization behind us. So let me tell you, there are people who join us within weeks are telling us, hey, I've been able to solve this problem using an AI agent. So we've made
Mm.
it
Wow.
endemic in a culture, right? And I think that's where you can make a change. So to your point, I think a lot of, especially, and I'll kind of defer to Jamie on this as well. And I'm sure, Lisa, you're seeing it when you're consulting with a lot of clients. All of a sudden, a lot of projects that were sitting and collecting dust because they didn't have the business case
Right.
to get
Right.
it done is all of a sudden coming to the fore because of these capabilities. So I'll give you a classic example. A client came to me early part of this year. They're a health tech firm, and they said, "Listen, we are launching this product. My team feels that it's going to take almost 21 or 22 months to launch they built the product, but they had to launch it. In order to launch the product, they had to get about 500 clients of theirs migrated into the new platform, and they were all custom 500 different installs. Think about it that way. And they had to move to this SaaS product that they developed. And their teams were telling them it's going to take 22 months or 23 months to get it done. And he said, listen, that's going to really affect and impact my business case.
Right.
We were able to go back to them and show them that using our platform, we could get the whole thing done in 10 months, which
Wow.
that his business, all of a sudden, the client's business case had 11 more months of revenue in it. And we were able to do it at a significantly lower cost. So just imagine, multiplier effect. So again, I'm going back to the point that I was making earlier, Eric. I think if we can think about the outcomes that we can drive for for the organization, the outcomes that we can deliver for individuals, I do believe that this will become, fairly mainstream and endemic. I think we
Hmm.
all have to make that effort to really explain why is this going to make a difference and how
Right.
is it going to make a difference to an engineer who's scared that he or she is going to lose her job, to CEOs and CIOs who are sitting on the fence and not knowing what to do with this, right?
Yeah. Well, and I have to say, Dr. Palmer, I'll throw it over to you. Folks, think about everything you do in your day to day and don't take anything for granted because there are lots of little things that you just take for granted that you have to do, like writing pro forma style documents, NDAs, MSAs, SOWs, all these things. That is a perfect use case for generative AI. It knows how to do all these sort of formats because it's just pattern matching. It's pattern matching on stuff it's already seen. So you can get what's the line? No one will have a bad first draft, right? And that's a really important thing to remember because once you have the base, you can just fine tune it and boom, you're off to the races. So there are lots and lots and lots of ways, Dr. Palmer, that you can save time and do a better job because also the people forget stuff. Large language models, they don't really forget too many of the details. You get lots of details, of course, depending upon how you specify, but that's very important to remember, right, Lisa?
Well, like in our business, you pointed out the legal aspects. We do that extensively, the whole pre-invoice process. And I think Arun mentioned it earlier, find those things that you don't like to do, right? And I have despised the entire pre-invoice process. Everything that's legal related is time consuming and frustrating and expensive. So what can we do to change that dynamic? And so we have leaned in very heavily on AI for that entire pre-invoice process. Very effective for us, and frankly, much better for my personal enjoyment of the work that we do. There's a lot less opportunity for mistakes. As you mentioned, Eric, it is pattern matching. There's a lot of repetitive work in there, and we make sure that we don't overlook things as fallible humans in that work. I also think that it's really important for us to remember that on the technical side of things, vibe coding has exploded citizen development, exploded it, right? So you've got business users all over your company that are figuring out how to use everything from Claude to Mind Studio, et cetera, to build their own prototypes. And hey, guess what? Just like that Shadow AI or Shadow IT has existed for decades, now we have Shadow AI. And now all they do the same thing they've done to IT professionals for decades, where they get it working and they love it and it's super fun, and it's essentially a prototype. It's not secure, it's not scalable. All of those things that we do to harden technologies on the IT side of the house, they haven't done any of that because they're business people, they're citizen developers. And so now what we have to do is, if you're thinking that you're going to have less need for developers and less need for help, I think it's going in the absolute opposite direction. So that backlog is potentially going to get even bigger, because now you've got all of these citizen developer created tools that have to be hardened and secured and scaled if you're going to continue to be able to get value out of the power of AI that you've put in the hands of your business people.
Yeah. What an excellent point. Shadow AI. I wrote that one
Yeah.
down. It's a good band name too. I'd go see those guys.
That's trademarked. That one's mine, Eric.
So, well, there you go. All right. That's it's pretty good. Well, because shadow IT is a real thing, and I'm reminded of something that a consultant, a veteran, battle scar ridden enterprise software consultant from 20 odd years ago said to me, and maybe we can pick this up in the podcast bonus segment too. He said, if something needs to happen inside an organization, it is happening one way or another. You may not know how it's happening, but rest assured, if it has to happen, it is happening. And that's what you get when you don't pay attention, basically. So shadow AI, shadow IT, and I'm thinking to myself, I love that other comment you made about focus on things you don't want to do. Look at your task list for the day. What part of your day is really annoying? And just be honest with yourself about this. What don't you like doing? Checking email, for example, or running audits, testing. Not a lot of people like testing. Testing can be automated. And these new environments, testing is just baked into the process. So when you hit the enter key, bing, the test kind of kicks off and does that for you. That's where a lot of the value comes from these vibe coding platforms, quite frankly, is they're doing a lot of the mundane stuff in the background while also suggesting things for you. And I've had this idea for a while now that a lot of the value of AI will manifest in the form of suggestions. And you're already seeing this in your email, for example. Google was doing this probably like almost 3 years ago, and then it kind of went away and it kind of came back, and now they seem to be back on the horse of automatically suggesting emails for you to follow up on. I'll see, hey, this one, so-and-so reached out to you 3 days ago, follow up. I'm like, huh, good point. I do want to follow up with that person. That was a potential gig. Hello. So humans forget stuff. The machines don't forget so much. I mean, they do hallucinate still a little bit, but they don't really forget. But folks, podcast bonus segment is coming up here next. Stand by. You're listening to DM Radio. All right, folks, time for the podcast bonus segment on a fantastic show. We've been talking to Arun Varadarajan of Ascendion, Dr. Lisa Palmer, who has trademarked Shadow AI. You got to love that. And Jamie Robles as well. Maybe, Jamie, I'll throw it over to you first. There are so many things in people's jobs that they don't like to do, but it really doesn't have to be that way. And I think that's one of the biggest green fields for leveraging AI. What do you think?
No, I think that's definitely true. I had said to Dr. Palmer in the chat that the thing I used to really hate as a developer was doing my technical release notes, but how important they are in our aging technology platforms is really paramount at this point. I do think that part of this is being able to give the teams guidance on where we want them. Governance is good, right? We've got a lot of different pieces and parts coming in with different AI enabled pieces. You listed Google. We talked about Copilot. We've talked about Claude. And I think the whole component of if it needs to happen in your organization, it's happening. I think it's important to make sure that we do understand how many different AI tools are active in our environments and making sure that we're communicating about that to our workforces and really making sure that they're using the tools that we want them using. Obviously, they're going to find others as well. But I think this is a really good opportunity. Burying your head in the sand and pretending that they're not using those tools is not where we need to be.
Right. That's right. And in terms of hardening, and maybe Arun, I'll throw it over to you. One of our guests is pointing out that the hardening process, guess what? That's a good job for AI agents to tackle because the agents can just crawl through the environment and look at every line of code, look at every place that it connects, and come up with ideas about how to harden these things. So you want them to scan your environment. I mean, I keep saying get your data house in order, folks, before you pull the trigger on some of this Gen AI stuff. Make sure you know what you have some inventory, and that's a lot easier these days as well. But some of these sticky things that you're very concerned about, Arun, they can be tackled by AI at least for the first run. What do you think?
Oh, for sure, for sure. So, in fact, as part of our thinking and our methodology, what we do is to really make sure that our AI agents understand how our clients work, because that's
Mm,
important. If I'm going, see, why are some of the tools failing in the market? The reason why they're failing is they're coming too hardwired and too pre-configured. Because the way Jamie runs her shop is going to be very different from the way somebody else runs their shop, right? While there is some commonality, the processes are different, the tools are different. I also want to talk, while we are talking on the subject of hardening, I want to talk about this whole issue of adoption. Adoption has been a challenge. And I'm sure, Lisa, when you're working with clients, that's been a big challenge for them. They buy these tools, there's no adoption. Why is there no adoption? I think that's something that we need to think about. Now, if you really look at a worker, right, anybody who works in a work environment, all of us are used to a given context. And I'll use technology because I obviously understand that domain really well. So if I'm a product manager, I am very fond of using certain tools, right? I use Jira Align, or I use AHA, I use certain set of tools. Now, if you go and tell them, stop using those tools and you will now use this new AI tool, they're going to say, no, I'm not going to do it. So
mm,
one of the important things is to ensure that as it is, this AI thing is causing dramatic changes in everybody, change, right? And the implications of the change is just not easy for everybody to fathom. So there's that looming large. Now, if you go and tell them, listen, your work environment is going to change as well, they don't like it. So what we are saying is you got to bring the power of AI into their context. Right?
mm.
So if you are a user experience designer and you love using Figma, I'm going to bring the agentic capability into Figma, right? So that's very important. And the other thing, to your point on hardening, if you have to use AI agents to harden Jamie's environment, then my agents need to understand Jamie's environment first before they even think of hardening her environment, right? So really bringing in that context. So contextual engineering is something that is something that we work on, where we say that we have to make sure that a lot of the context is provided to the agents. So
Hmm.
my view is that data at one point in time was core. Now I don't think it's core. I think data is going to be more context because the LLMs
Oh,
have got all of the training done. So if
yeah.
you can reorient your thinking around data as context so that the agent can perform better and operate within that space, then I think the adoption will become great. Because I've heard clients saying, like you said, some of my clients saying, listen, I used this tool, it spat out code, but it was not at all compliant. That's because the tool has not bothered to learn your environment.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we make sure that our agents are baked into the client's environment. So if the client has an authentication framework, or if a client has a specific security standard, when our agents spit out the code, they conform to those standards. And that's so important for someone like Jamie, right?
Yeah.
Especially in a highly regulated environment, if I do not follow and understand how to handle PHI data, right? If I'm not HIPAA compliant, if I don't understand the CMS rules, if I don't understand all of the regulations, and if I don't get my agents to understand that and operate in her context, then she's not going to like the output, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of that I think people are ignoring. They're throwing tools at problems as usual, as opposed to trying to find, solutions. So that's
Right.
what I think we are heavily focused on, and really trying to see how we can tailor and customize these AI solutions for our clients.
Yeah, that's
But-
very, very clever.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And we just got a couple minutes left here. I know that Dr. Palmer, you've got a new book coming out, Show AI, Don't Tell It. It's funny because I happen to know something that is very relevant to that. Many years ago, I read a book, or most of it, a fair amount of it, called Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus by Ludwig Wittgenstein. And at the end of the book, he said, some things cannot be said, they must be shown. And that's kind of what you're talking about, right? So you have to know how to communicate with these environments. And so tell us real quick about that.
I'm going to build on a lot of what Arun said there from an AI adoption perspective. This idea of contextualization is so critical, and if you can contextualize visually, it will help you to leap forward. So I encourage people to prototype. Build prototypes. Use vibe coding to build a prototype. You can do it so that people can see in minutes what it is that you have in mind. You can use everything from old school dashboards to, matrices to holograms, anything you can imagine that will actually bring to life the art of the possible to contextualize for that audience what AI means to them. You can just leapfrog your AI adoption efforts by doing that, by leveraging these, it's communication. What we're talking about here are communication skills that we have to dig deep and learn some new ways to actually work in partnership with AI to create the visualizations that will drive that eye-opening experience for your individuals and get them on board. I tell people all the time, we've got to capture hearts before we capture minds.
That's good. And Jamie, I'll throw it over to you for final thoughts. You have a really interesting thought about context and what it can do for organizational silos. Tell us about that real quick.
Yeah, I mean, there's a phrase that context is for kings, right? When you sit at the top of the
Ooh.
organization, you can see across the entire thing. And we're expecting our departments within our organizations to be able to break down those silos. I think AI has a role to play here, right? I mean, when we think about context being communicated across the organization, it breaks down silos. And when we have people on the same page about what's important, about what we should be working on, we talked about those backlogs. I've been in companies where those backlogs were years deep. And you know that there's stuff back there that nobody really wants anymore. So again, it goes back to what's the context of what we're working on? What do we know to be true? And are we all marching in the same direction?
Right. Wow, what a fantastic show. Big thanks to Dr. Lisa Palmer, to Arun Varadarajan of Ascendion, and to Jamie Robles as well from WellPoint. Thank you so much for your time. Send me an email if you want to be on the show, folks. Info@dmradio.biz. This does conclude our program. We'll talk to you next time. You have been listening to DM Radio.